until 1 p.m. Okay, this is the CEO Roundtable for Nutrition that will start in the seminar room on the first floor. You can grab the elevator on the right-hand side as soon as you exit and go up for the 1 o'clock CEO Roundtable. Our next keynote speaker basically has amassed experience with one of the world's leading food ingredient solutions providers. He's currently based in Singapore, rapidly evolving market of Asia Pacific, Latin America, Middle East, and Africa. Please welcome Andrew Taylor, who's the president of Growth Market at Tate & Lyle.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. As it was mentioned, I am Andrew Taylor. I'm the president of the growth markets for Tate & Lyle, and for us that includes Turkey, Middle East and Africa, Asia, and Latin America. And for those of you who don't know, Tate & Lyle is one of the world's largest food ingredient companies. We've been in the food ingredient business for the better part of 160 years. Before I started, I do want to say thank you, and as it was mentioned, I reside in Singapore. Singapore is truly looking at Dubai as a model for how to open up, and the energy that we've seen in the last couple of days here has been really infectious, so I hope to bring some of that back to my colleagues in Asia when I return, so thank you. Today, I really want to cover basically three topics. The first is quite quickly covering what we're seeing across the world as some of the major trends in food and beverage innovation with very much an ingredient lens. As I mentioned, we're an ingredient company. The second is talking about how those trends can apply here in the Middle East and the Gulf region in particular. And then finally, share some additional detail on the sugar and calorie reduction knowledge program that was announced yesterday and how we can help here in the region to pursue that initiative. But if I start at the beginning, except for that, the panel discussion that was had before was a really nice jumping off point. I thought what Andre and Balke were talking about the major trends we see are really synonymous with the major trends that we see. And in particular, when we think about the four trends that are reshaping the food and beverage manufacturing world, there's essentially four. So the first is plant-based. This is not a surprise. Everyone who's been talking about innovation in recent days has been talking about plant-based. We'll get into that in some more detail about what that actually means from an ingredient and formulation standpoint. What has been surprising is how broad it is. When we first started watching this trend 10 years ago, it was about vegans and vegetarianism, and now it is much broader than that. The second trend, again, bouncing off the great conversation that was held at the panel yesterday, is sugar and calorie reduction. So consumers post-pandemic are demanding lower calorie, healthier options. Regulators and governments around the world, notably in our regions, in my region, in Mexico, in Chile, in Singapore, and increasingly here, are demanding sugar-reduced products, and we'll mention in a second some of those implications for this area. The two that are probably a little bit less discussed, which I think are interesting, is number one, transparency. And transparency is very simple. When consumers turn a label over, they want to look and see basically two things. As few things as possible, so not very long ingredient decks, and two, they want to recognize all of the things that are on there. And that is an extraordinary challenge as a food and beverage manufacturer about how to make that actually work in practice. So that transparency is something that we're seeing. If you look at the pie chart on the left, essentially what that is you scrape all the social media mentions and posts and blogs using some technology that we have, and you can see that the first three trends of plant-based, sugar and calorie reduction, and the transparency are pretty big. The tiny little sliver you see at the top is one that we see exploding around the world around gut health. And that is, how do you have a healthy microbiome? How do you treat your gut through things like fibers, probiotics, prebiotics, many different things, cultures, to really treat that as a major part of that ongoing management. Our strong belief is, although when you look at it here in the Gulf region today, it's not a huge percentage, we think it's going to continue to be a real growth vector that companies can position for in the future. If we go deeper on basically the first two, the first is sugar and the first one is plant-based. On plant-based, as I mentioned, we've covered this in many different ways today. What I think is most interesting, though, is if you translate it to this region, which we've tried to do here. So you can see you basically have a couple of things. For folks in the Emirates, and then also we just chose to do Saudi Arabians, it's very similar across the Gulf countries. 70% plus find the claim plant-based attractive. That was not the case 5 years ago, and I think we in the room understand that. What is also surprising is if you look on the categories that are affected, it's basically everything. It's snacks, it's juice drinks, sauces and seasonings, and the number continues to go up and up and up. From an ingredient perspective, from an innovation perspective, it's really difficult to make plant-based products that hit that triangle we've talked about great taste, because I love the analogy earlier, if it sits on the plate, it's not that healthy for you. Similarly, do you have it be cost effective for the consumers? And third, is it nutritious? This is what consumers demand just in meat replacements. It has to be moist, juicy, tender, in some cases taste similar to meat, in some cases not. It's really difficult to do this. So the formulation and building that capability of how to be plant-based is something that we see the leading ingredient companies and frankly the leading beverage and snacks and you name it companies around the world doing. So it's certainly an opportunity that we see. What's also exciting is in this region, there are many examples and many more examples coming of where you're having successful products with a real plant-based, and it's across categories. So we've just chosen a selection here. You have plant-based keto chips, which I don't like, but some people do. Classic sauces, things that are right in the center of the grocery store as an example, all the way to kids-based products there at the end. And so that plant-based trend continues to expand in the categories that it's relevant to. It's a major trend, and the question that we would be pushing our partners on is, are you really being big enough in your aspirations of how you can seize the plant-based trend? The second trend that I think it's worth talking about, especially given the health challenges here in the Middle East, and unfortunately, it's not only the Middle East. If I think about the areas that I cover, there's this debate of, is the obesity rate highest in Mexico or highest in the Middle East or highest in other places? This is a real challenge that we see. And sugar and calorie reduction is a key way in which leading providers, consumers, and governments are increasingly demanding that better functionality. What's interesting here as well is you have the claims of low sugar are appealing, which I don't think is surprising, but again, it comes with taste and cost. And if you look across the top, you can see it starts oftentimes in juice drinks. Juice drinks are the easy one to point to as being relatively high sugar. In reality, it can be many other products. And so what we see the leading food and beverage manufacturers across the world doing is having a very clear strategy for sugar reduction. And we'll talk about that in a second, about what it means kind of brand by brand. It's also, there's a key point here too about not all sugar reduction is the same. So you have this challenge, which is a push towards natural sweeteners. These trends link. So when consumers turn over the ingredient deck, they want to see things that they recognize. So we simply chose here, stevia leaf extract versus rubiacide, which is the other way you can do it in certain geographies. So what matters here is you think about that trend is how do you position, how to work with your formulation to actually deliver the consumer experience, and it very much bounces off the conversation that we were having earlier this morning. Again, there's lots of great examples. I'm not going to belabor the examples, but I think the thing that's most interesting, again, is how wide the categories are. So this is just a small selection from what we see here in this region. Everything from, again, sweetened juice drinks, not surprising, a really common place where sugar reduction efforts start in the Philippines and Mexico and here, all the way through high-protein, low-sugar snack bars. That's a real challenge. That's a difficult thing to do, to take that sugar out in a way that consumers like, down to indulgent categories. So we see it sometimes in confection. This is a milkshake that's designed to be, as you can see, gluten-free, fat-free, sugar-reduced. And so this trend is affecting multiple categories. And our strong belief is because of the health challenges in particular in this region, The focus on sugar and calorie reduction is only going to increase. So seizing that and how do you do that is the key challenge. If we take a step back, though, and say just on these two big trends, what are some of the takeaways for the food and beverage manufacturers here in the Middle East and, frankly, in other geographies as well? On plant-based, this is thinking big enough. This is no longer about veganism and vegetarianism. This is about large percentages of the population that are choosing to eat differently. And how do you capture that opportunity? The second part is consumers are willing to pay. So if you look at the price premiums, and it varies by segment and varies by product and brand, you do see real price premiums being put into the market for these products if you can get the taste, the texture, the label right. So it is a place we do see some consumers willing to pay. I mentioned texture because we do a lot of this work around the world. Getting the texture right, and our R&D colleagues here will be nodding their head, is the real challenge in a lot of plant-based topics. If you look at the back of a vegan hamburger or steak or burrito, whatever you want to do, you basically see there's a lot of things you have to do there to make it very much applicable to the local consumer taste. So that texture bit is really important. And then on the bottom, you can see this piece about on-pack claims and how do you advertise. This is where the theme we talked about this morning of how do you actually partner with governments, how do you partner as an industry group to really make sure you have that leverage. So that's one set. On the sugar reduction, if we take it from that dimension, you can see, number one, this is here to stay. So the only question is speed. How quickly does it come? What tools are used? For 5 or 10 years, this is certainly going to be the case. There is a difference. There is the stealth sugar reductions you often see, which are not on the pack. There are the brand new products that are launched that have very large sugar reduction. From an ingredients perspective, from a formulation perspective, the tools you use are really different. They can be really different. So the reason we raise it is being clear about what your aspiration actually affects what ingredients you use and how you formulate. You see that the bit about natural sweeteners, that's always going to be a tension. There's the cost versus the labeling, which we have. And then the last bit is really important about the system. So when you were doing sugar reduction, which is such an important priority, the sweetener is only a small part of the challenge. From a formulation perspective, you also need to do much more around adding things back. Texture, texturants, fibers, to get that mouthfeel that consumers want and deserve. So really thinking of it in a systems approach. And because of the complexity, one of the things that I wanted to end with and why we're so happy to be here is to talk a little bit about something that was announced yesterday around the Sugar and Calorie Reduction Knowledge Building Program. Sugar and calorie reduction and obesity are a massive challenge in this geography and around the world, and no one can actually claim to have all the answers. We're really proud to be able to work with the food and beverage manufacturers group here as a way to contribute something to the society here. And just so folks have a sense for what this is, we're going to be launching a series of 6 sessions over 2 hours each, starting in November, with basically 3 objectives. The first objective is sharing knowledge. So every person in this room has a view on what sugar and calorie reduction means, what the consumer insights are, what the challenges are from a technical standpoint. So we're really going to bring the group together to do that. The second is talk about technology. There are technologies all around the world that actually help with sugar and calorie reductions in ways that are effective in cost and good in consumer experience. You oftentimes don't need to start from scratch. So one of the things we want to do is help bring in some of those leading technologies that we see around the world. And the third really is to make it very practical. What we want to be able to do is work with the attendees to have prototypes, to taste product, to do refinements, to move things in the target categories, because you have to make it real. And so one of the things that we're most excited about is to work with some of the leading food and beverage manufacturers here in the region, and then also is open as well to government entities, to regulators and the like that want to come and partner together on this really important initiative. A big part of Tate & Lyle's 160-year history is our purpose. You know, we talk about it as improving lives for generations. It's really a privilege to be able to help contribute here under the leadership of the Food and Beverage Manufacturers Group. We're privileged to do that. We're going to be having these sessions, as I mentioned, beginning in November, starting in our new technical center, which we just opened on Monday here in Dubai. And with that, I hope to have the chance to meet many of you both in those sessions and after this session. If you do want more information, again, just to be practical, we've got a booth over there in the back corner. We're happy to give the information about how you can get involved in this important program as it evolves through the course of the coming few months. And then finally, I just want to again say thank you. As someone, as I mentioned, who resides in Singapore and travels all around the world, it's been a real privilege to be part of this, to see that energy, and my commitment that I've made to my team and then also to the customers we've met here is to bring that same energy as we go back across the rest of the world. So thank you for your time, and hopefully this serves as a bit of a framing for the town hall and the next discussion that we're about to have here. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you very much. Yeah, indeed, you really nicely teed up the panel discussion coming up. Like I started off this morning saying, today is about growth, and innovation we see is a key pillar to getting the growth that we want in the food sector. But for those of us who've been in the business long enough, we all know that innovation is also not easy to achieve, right? I mean, I can come here and definitely tell you that I've got more of my innovations wrong than right. And I'm sure I'm not the only one in the room who's had that experience, because innovation is incredibly difficult to get right. So therefore, today in the panel, we'll discuss what is the best way to get your innovation right, what are some of the learnings, some of the best practices, while I have some questions prepared for the panel, I'll open the floor towards the end to you as well, so feel free to ask your questions. Now let me start by introducing my panel. Ahmed Bayoumi. Ahmed Bayoumi is a food and beverage board member. He's the CEO of Global Food Industries and IBFI, which is International Beverage and Filling Industries. Ahmed, please.
Thank you.
Ahmed has also had a very long career, the longest being in Mars, before he took over as the CEO at Global Food Industries. I have Gary Brenner. Gary is representing Aleph Farms. He's the market and corporate director for Aleph Farms. For those who have not seen their booth outside, you really must, because Aleph Farms is a very, very innovative company. I'm really privileged to have him join this panel. They are into cell-cultured, cultivated meat. And Gary, we'd like to hear a little bit more from you during the panel. Almost 25 years in the food sector, and prior to Atia, she's worked for Mars and for Unilever. And last but not the least, my colleague from Tate & Lyle, Dominique Floch. Dominique also has been in the food sector for 20 plus years, in Danone for a significant period of time. So he's been on, let's say, the food manufacturer side of the business, and now with food ingredients. Welcome, thank you. So, Andrew, you very nicely shared some of the trends that you are seeing in food, and that's a great learning for us in food manufacturing. Now, I'd like to hear from you, Sandra, from your perspective of a food manufacturer. When you heard some of these trends that Andrew was sharing, how do you relate to them? Are you working on something different, something additional?
Well, I think they told everything I wanted to tell you today, unfortunately. So I'm only going to repeat. I'm very much resonating with what was said this morning. Absolutely, product innovation and specifically creating differentiation in product is absolutely a must for our food and beverage industry. There are so many products out there in the market. It's very hard for consumers to find a product these days. So it's very critical for us as food and beverage industry to be very consumer and customer centric, because we're serving both. we have so much information. We had the consumer trends this morning. There's so much information in terms of food science, technologies. There's so much information available. And I think the hardest thing is to turn this information into an actionable insight and a product that will really meet better the consumer needs. So at Acquia, we're constantly monitoring the trends. We are mapping. We are always focusing on health, nutrition, and healthy foods that we mentioned this morning. We work closely also with the authorities, the legal authorities. We're trying to understand the real health needs of this market. So we're continuously doing this, and we are integrating this into our R&D roadmap. Now, talking about the trends that we are incorporating and see that we need to incorporate into our plans, are very much linked to this trends that we talked about, and I think a lot of them were enhanced during the pandemic. And the first one is kind of obvious. We talked about health and healthy food, I think, this morning. And I think one thing that this pandemic taught us, which is probably a good thing, is that you have to be healthy if you want to fight against this disease. And healthy means a healthy body. And I think this morning it was mentioned, we are what we eat, and I strongly believe in that. So I think the consumer's awareness is drastically raised on that, which is a good thing during this pandemic. So they're looking for products that are definitely better for them. So whether it's, as we mentioned earlier, with putting line on less sugar, or no bad fats in the product. I think they're also looking at product with enhancement, so with added benefits. Okay, and obviously the immunity platform was very strong during the pandemic. We were actually ahead of the pandemic when we launched our vitamin D water, and then subsequently our vitamin D flour. Because if you think about it, these are two products we consume pretty much on a daily basis. I think water for sure. So it's very easy by consuming this product to increase your uptake of vitamin D. So that was one of the things that we did at Acquia. The second thing is, I think it was also quite a lot mentioned this morning about convenience. Yes, the consumer still wants convenient food, but I think the difference is they want more.
Clearer labels. What I mean is the ability to make better food choices, compare products, so that they can actually decide on what product is better for them.
Yes.
Okay? So that's the second part that we can, I think, work on. The third, we mentioned flexitarians. Yes, I definitely believe that they are the one driving the agenda more than the vegan or the vegetarians. We actually have invested ourselves into processed meats, but I'm very happy to hear that they also launched their plant-based portfolio in Jordan, our Nabil Food company. So we are also driving towards this plant-based agenda. Sustainability, I heard of it all day long yesterday. It's obviously a big driver also in our this effort towards the sustainability. So that's why we also launched our 100% plant bottle to meet that consumer need, but also our customer needs, because they also have that agenda on their plate. So we have to also help our customers to meet their agenda. And I think the last one, we've not talked so much about it, which is personalization, or understanding the fragmentation of the consumer base that we have here, which is very particular in this region. And I think there are a lot of opportunities to develop product to target specific needs, whether it's specific needs for women or men or young kids to elderlies, or even intolerances and allergic people are desperately looking for products. So I think there are also a lot of opportunity in that. So at Agdea, we continuously work towards this trend, working with the trends and trying to bring products to the market that definitely meet their needs.
Thank you. Thanks, very clear. And I have to really compliment you and your company on that plant-based bottle. I thought that was a really fantastic innovation. So really well done there. While I have you, from your perspective, from an R&D lens, and you worked in other countries as well, other regions as well, how do you see innovating in our region with our multiple countries, multiple ethnicities, versus, say, another country, another region?
Sorry, I can...
So I'm saying innovating in the GCC, how is it different from innovating, say, in a monoculture, let's say in the UK, for instance, or in France?
Yes, I think this comes back to the point that was raised yesterday about scalability. I think the hardest thing is when you have a very fragmented community like here in the UAE, is that if you want to develop products for specific needs and specific ethnicities, for example, is your volumes gets very small. So I think this is a challenge that as food and beverage we need to tackle, is to still be able to deliver these needs, because they are there, and I think they are an opportunity we need to tap into. But for sure, this region is very particular. I mean, I've been in the region 18 years, and I can say that it's always a challenge as R&D to develop the right product, but that also can reach a bigger population so we can have the volumes in our factories as well. So it's a challenge.
Yeah, thanks. Earlier, I started off saying that more often than not, you get your innovation wrong, right? And the statistics, I think, say 70–80% of what is launched as new products actually don't really work out. I'd like to hear from you, maybe starting with you, Dominique. You, as somebody who's working with multiple food manufacturers, what are some of your key learnings when you look at innovation and when things don't go right?
Yeah, it's not an easy answer, and I won't pretend that I have a magic recipe. I think I'll say two things. Sometimes we see a lot of good projects coming to us, good requests, and we get very close to the launch phase with something that could have a lot of success. And the last step is not always made, which means that not all the innovation are reaching to the market, and which is probably sometimes a miss, because that could be the right idea at the right moment. And then the other learning I would share is, and it won't surprise, I'm sure also most of you in the room, is that sometimes there should be a bit more patience, because we also see the product arriving on the market. Then it does not go at the expected speed. And you all know that we work with data. I think Sandra mentioned that. So we have the plan. We have the expected volume to be reached at months +3, months +5. And sometimes enough time is not given, and then the product will be withdrawn from the market. We also have some retail pressure. And that sometimes as well can be a missed opportunity for giving time for real innovation to find its way and to find its market and reach its scale.
Okay, so your advice is you need to sometimes be more patient than you are. We put very high expectations. We don't see the results come through, and we say, okay, it's not working.
And we may stop too early. And the other advice is sometimes as well, let's take more risk, or let's dare more. We touch a lot on this strong trend, and it's only getting stronger, about healthier food. But if you look at the data of what is locally produced versus what is still imported, the share of imported products is still, to my humble eyes, too important. And when you know the capacity of the local food industry, there are certainly more risks that can be taken, and if it's done locally, it will better fit to also what Sandra said, all the diversity of the market. It could also increase the success rate.
Okay. I want to stay with you on that point that you mentioned about risks. So about 5–10 years back, we used to hear when you're innovating, when you're putting a launch out there, we used to say, bigger, bolder, better. Really go full blast, go with full firepower for your launches. And now there is an emerging thinking on maybe test and learn, pilot, smaller scale. I want to hear from you, what is your experience? What is your advice to the audience? Maybe Ahmed from your side.
So, of course, innovation, you learn more from the mistakes than from the wins. And in my career, went through a couple of really bold innovations that didn't work in the region. About 18 years ago, Mars wanted to expand its food business in the region. And in Europe, we have a very large, at the time, Mars had a very large sauces business that makes pasta sauces and rice sauces. And we thought we'd bring that concept to the Middle East. We did the research. We developed a brand called As-Sultana that does kapsa, does bamia, does dolma. And we launched it in a big way throughout the region with huge support, only to be disappointed that we found that the housewives did not really like the idea of their job being done by a company, and instead were using it only for flavoring. And we ended up collecting the product from the market, and that was a $10 million exercise. I personally now believe a lot more in firing bullets than cannonballs. So launch a number of tests simultaneously in different segments of the market. So as we speak in global food, we have a plant-based range of burgers that is being tested. We have a range of products also that contains salicornia as a replacement for salt, given the high issue of high blood pressure in the region as a problem. We also launched as a test juice drink sweetened with stevia leaf to reduce sugar content by more than 90%. And we will see which one of these are subject for scaling up and investing the big sums of money behind it, rather than go big bang and one go up front.
So once any of these concepts shows promise, then you'll go big with full capex, full support.
Absolutely, and we had a similar thing in the past. A few years back, the company tested a range of cooked products that were outsourced to a supplier in Southeast Asia. But once the results were in and the consumer confirmed that they like it, we invested $8 million manufacturing the product here in the UAE and supporting it with much heavier advertising and distribution and regional rollout.
Okay, great, thanks. Gary, please do talk a little bit about what your company does, and then you please come to my question.
I will come to your question in this way. I think I am the oldest person on this panel working with the youngest company, and that is Aleph Farms. We are developing and producing cultivated meat, cell-cultured cultivated meat from the tissue cells of a live animal. In the context of this discussion here, where I think, if I'm not mistaken, and it's not a criticism, we're talking about incremental changes within the food industry. And each year, and I've been part of this food industry for many, many years, we're talking about changing this protein content and flavor and sugar reduction and so on. At the recent United Nations Food Summit, my colleagues spoke about a different kind of innovation, not the incremental kind over a period of years, but a transformational change. And that transformational change recognizes the fact that we cannot continue to feed 7, 8, 9, 10 billion people in the future using conventional agricultural means. We have to think outside of the box. We have to think in terms of technologies, new technologies, which will require years of innovation and mistakes, as well as our understanding the needs of the market and the expectations of the consumers. Cultivated meat, from that point of view, is taking the cells, as I said, from a healthy animal in a non-invasive way, kind of a biopsy. The animal doesn't know. The cells are coming from a cow, in this case. In the future, we'll be working on cell lines from sheep to make lamb meat. And the the science of this goes as far as that we know who the father and who the mother of that cow is. We take the tissue cells and then we isolate them in laboratory conditions, in very controlled conditions, and we're able to grow those cells, isolate, differentiate, and then grow those cells, and later on in tissue bioreactors seed the cells on a plant-based protein or any kind of scaffold that we want to use in the future in order to make a whole muscle meat kind of steak. This is a big point of differentiation from the other cultivated meat companies because almost everybody is working on minced or nuggets, whether it's chicken or fish. And here we're talking about exactly an answer to what Andrew Taylor said, a product where moisture, juiciness, tenderness, and the mouthfeel are critical to the consumer feeling, yes, this is meat.
Correct. So you're saying that this is a high R&D intensive product. Once you go this path, you just can't go and dip your finger into the market and see if it works or not. You have to really be committed to take it fully through.
Obviously, we're learning and we know pretty well the market. And part of learning the market is that we don't believe we can do this on our own. The science, the 35-plus technologists, scientists that are working in our team to create this product over the last few years, coming together, we learn from them, and then we go off and speak with major companies. You have here present in the booths outside BRF, who is to be a strategic partner of Aleph. They're a meat company, a meat manufacturing company, poultry manufacturing, and they, in the discussions we've had, see this as an extension of their core businesses. Yeah. And the meat product that we're going to make for Brazil, as the meat product that we will be making here in the region, will address the taste and culinary expectations of the local. So in answer, maybe to say that we're thinking local, but we're acting global, and we think global has to be big. Yeah. We think global has to create an industry which can address the needs of the human race.
Correct, correct. Sorry, maybe just to finish off with my perspective on that question. There was a time when to launch you needed big media support. You needed TV advertising to really get the awareness going. Today, you can achieve some of these awareness objectives by going digital, and therefore you can go actually smaller, and you don't have the pressure to go big TV advertising. Now, when we talk of innovation, we are usually it is about product innovation. Now, my question to the panel is, when you're looking innovation, are you looking product only or product primarily, or do you have examples where innovation is happening in other functions as well?
Happening? Innovation
in other functions, in the business model, in the delivery of your products. Maybe Ahmed or anybody.
I think, as we discussed yesterday, 24th of March, the COVID forced everybody to be both agile and innovative. And I remember with one of our key accounts, they wanted to make a very large order to increase their inventory of our products as part of food security, but they did not have the space. So between our sales force and our supply chain and that retailer, we agreed to use a refrigerated container in the parking lot of that retailer to store the additional stocks that they require so that they don't run out. And that's a simple example of, need is the mother of invention.
Yes, absolutely. I would highly encourage us, very often when we're talking about innovating, marketing people go out and start writing product briefs, but I would highly encourage all of us to look at the total value chain of your product and where do you actually need to innovate. Just sharing an example from my company. So we sell rainbow milk in the region, And as you can imagine, when the pandemic hit, all the out-of-home consumption, particularly the consumption that happens from tea shops, got severely impacted because people were not going to these tea shops. On the other hand, what we saw is everybody is ordering food online home. And then we said, okay, so what do we do? And then we came up with this idea. We tied up with the Kitopi Cloud Kitchen, and we developed an offering that goes now through Zomato, Deliveroo, and you can order your karak tea, your favorite karak tea, through Zomato, Deliveroo to your home, along with some snacks and desserts. And this has taken off quite nicely, and we're really pleased that, you know, a very conventional business model we could disrupt and still make the product available where the consumer wants to have it. I want to talk a little bit about regulation now, because regulation is significantly aiding or holding us back from innovating. Maybe Sandra, from your perspective, because these challenges probably land up on your table, what is your experience with regulation on innovating?
I mean, I think can you hear me? It's very clear that the whole direction in the region is to move towards future foods or breakthrough innovation, like just Gary discussed. So we do really recommend that there should be a specific committee to assess those novel foods in the region. And I was very happy to hear this morning His Excellency Abdullah Al-Shamsi talking about it in his first keynote in the morning. So we'll be very happy to support this development of this committee, or support the assessment, because it's very important to assess, of course, keeping the food safety in mind of the consumer, because we want to make sure that whatever we introduce as novel food is still very safe for the consumer, that what we say on the pack is a reality. So understanding, it may be even running clinical studies on some of the product when we have like bioavailable materials and ingredients, for example. So I think it's very important to have this committee to support the growth of this future food, because this is what the region really needs.
Correct. Gary, what is your experience with regulation? You're really, is regulation prepared to handle your company?
First of all, I'm glad to say in Israel, for example, the Israeli Innovation Authority has come together with the Ministry of Health, and they've chosen a few startups like Aleph Farms as a pilot to begin to see how all of these massive investments that are going into these startups can actually turn into commercial products in the market. In our case, coming here into the region, and you've seen the announcement of the investment that we're receiving from the UAE, from Abu Dhabi, and we do have plans for establishing a manufacturing site here, not only for the UAE, but as a hub to the region. Regulation is one part. And then we have the other part. We come from a country where kosher certification is of utmost importance, and now we're coming into a region where halal certification is of utmost importance. And the halal certification starts with slaughtering meat, but we're not slaughtering the meat. So we have to create a language which the regulators, the certifiers, and so on can come together. And here the government's very, very important to coordinate all of that.
Great.
Collaboration, thanks. As we mentioned yesterday. Collaboration.
In my last 5-7 minutes, I want to ask you, what are some of the best practices that you have seen here that can really bring innovation to the region, to the nationals, to the local population? Maybe Dominique, your experience, you were quite involved in the innovation lab.
Yeah, that's the first one that would come to my mind, and we saw the video before. I think this initiative taken by the F&B Manufacturers Group was really fantastic, because connecting young local talents to the food industry brings energy, brings a local view, help as well to develop talents and generate an even bigger passion, and that's what we could feel. And that's something that worked very well. We did enjoy a lot because we had the chance to be part of the exercise. So having those interactions was really interesting. And we just look forward to the next session, which will happen next year. And we are also happy because we'll have bigger means to support it, as we have just launched our innovation center. So we'll be able to engage more. and continue doing an important thing, which is developing local talents that can join and continue supporting us in this innovation cycle and innovation success, hopefully increasing the success rate.
Correct, thanks.
Can I add to this?
Yes, please.
I really would like to confirm what has just been said, because at Actia, we've really seen a shift in the interest from the students that are actually seeking for internship within the food and beverage industry. I think, I mean, over the last 11 years I've been at Actia, I've seen really year on year more and more students coming towards us for internship. And I think having also an R&D facility like you have just launched, we've also got 3 facilities for product development. That makes it also attractive for them, because they can come, they can really apply what they've learned at university and really see the creation. I mean, the joy that I could see on this video, I see it also in the internship. And really, what was interesting is to see that excitement and the realization that the food industry is a great place to work. So I think that's been really a very important step, I think, also to bring this national talent within our industry and to see them thrive and develop into this industry. So for us, it's been really a great step forward, and within the R&D team, we're very pleased to have actually 3 national talent, and one of them actually has completed this year a thesis with the university in parallel of working with us. And that just shows as well that even if you are in a food industry, I think that's a strong message. You can still continue your academic and continue your growth, and I think that's also important. So we're very pleased to see these changes, and I think bringing this national talent, this youth, brings also creativity. It brings a completely different new perspective. And I think innovation is also about bringing this mix of people, of different background, different age groups, because we all bring something to the table. So I think it's very important to bring this youth within the organization to drive innovation.
This is great to hear, and thank you very much for what you're doing. In fact, yesterday we have signed an MOU with the government. Today the participation of the nationals in the food sector is 0.5%, and the MOU agrees to take it to 5% over the next 5 years. So quite look forward to having that participation. I'd like to, at this stage, open the floor to questions. If there are any questions, please raise your hand. We'll get a mic across to you.
55 seconds.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Sergey Bida, IMCD Middle East. I have a question to food manufacturers, to Ahmed, Gary, and Sandra. What would be your expectations from food ingredients supplier to help you to speed up the innovation?
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
Could you repeat that question, please?
What would be your expectations to food ingredients supplier to help you to enable and speed up innovations?
Ladies first. You are such a gentleman. Well, actually, we were having this discussion. I was very honored to be invited to the opening of Tet and Lyle facility. It's something that I have been actually saying myself also to all the suppliers of ingredients. I think your question is about food ingredients, right? I think it is very important to be able to develop products in a very fast manner. So for us, I mean, at Actia, we have so many categories. We are, as I said, bombarded with so much information in terms of consumer trends and data, food science. Thank you. But the hardest thing is to actually to be able to develop fast, and we need the expertise of the ingredient supply. I mean, I'm not an expert in every single ingredient that are available currently on the market. It's a huge pool of information. So what really we are asking our suppliers is to work really with us, and I think having a facility in the region, in the UAE, is helping this. I'm lucky I have my own development lab, but I think they can also help us on developing faster and to get quicker to an end result. Because at the end of the day, what we send is trends are shifting, and they're shifting faster and faster. So unless we are quick to catch the boat, we're too late to launch. So this is where I would say we can really work with the food ingredients, is bring us your expertise and help us on developing a product faster. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ahmed, your turn.
Just to add on what Sandra said is, you know, food manufacturers are trying to solve for three problems simultaneously: taste, health, and affordability. And the more the ingredients suppliers help us solve for this complex three-dimensional problems, the more we succeed together.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Is there another question there?
Well, thank you very much for a great discussion. My question is for Gary. Two things. How would you overcome the cultural sensitivities of cultured wheat, number one? And the second one, what kind of media would be used in growing the cells?
I can't hear very well the question.
How do you overcome the cultural sensitivities for cultured meat? And what kind of media do you grow the cells in, right?
On the cultural sense, we're conducting consumer surveys together with our strategic partners and sometimes on our own in almost every country. Some of these have been published, by the way. And we're asking those types of questions. Some of the things that we've learned is that the sensitivity, the motivations, and what might be the obstacles for people trying and becoming consumers of cultivated meat. So some of the motivations are the environment, sustainability. Others that people do not want, they like the taste of meat, but they don't want to slaughter animals. And other motivations might be, actually, once again, the concern for the planet and where all this is leading, that we cannot continue to raise so many animals for slaughter. On the other hand, we're learning the obstacles. For example, in Europe in particular, the subject of genetic modification is very, very important. But in fact, the technologies that we have developed do not require any genetic modification at any stage. We do not require any fetal bovine serum in answer to your question. We're using natural growth media, minerals, vitamins, amino acids, and so on, in a unique formulation where we're outsourcing the different components and then putting them together on our own, so that as we're starting to present the documentation to the regulatory authorities in the States and Singapore and hopefully soon here, they will see that, in fact, the issues of safety, the issues of sterility of the production process, no antibiotics and so on, are covered by the entire protocol of production and development that we've done.
Thanks. Thank you, Gary. I think we're out of time now. Thank you very much, my fellow panelists, and thank you for your questions. I hope you enjoyed the session.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Hey, please. Professor. Right, I know we're constantly running out of time. we're about 1 hour over our sessions, so I'm going to try and hopefully get you to the lunch break as fast as possible. Our next speaker is currently he was the first chairman of the board of directors of the National Food Safety Authority that was established in Egypt in 2017. He's basically embraced the idea of changing food safety systems within Egypt and the establishment of a national authority for food safety since 2003.
Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm very happy to be with you sharing some of the challenges we are facing in food safety culture in my country, Egypt. I'm very happy also to be in Dubai, the city that in a unique way we're able to mix the best of the Western culture with the best of our culture. Thank you for being in Dubai. My intervention Thank you. My intervention in this presentation is to discuss one of important condition or requirement in food safety system, in particular to how to change this one. In clause 2, they decided that the new authority, ministry or organization or authority in the country to be in single place. To food is already implemented by NEFSA. Any new legislation relating to food, it should be issued by NEFSA as well. The need for changing the food safety system is including pharmaceutical and plant on the farm. Then the agency decided to collect all the different old agencies related to food control in one agency, but left was going on farm. In this slide, we demonstrate the role of food safety starting from harvesting. We consider the first food establishment that deals with the farm, supplier zero. And from supplier zero, the fresh foods goes to up to supplier 2, which is mainly manufacturing or storage house or packaging house, and then move to supplier 2 that deals with the consumer. The role of NEFSA is covered from supplier 0 up to supplier 2. Many problems could occur on the farm, especially in an old country that have an old way of doing agriculture that may not move fast as it should be in any other way. We already has passed the era of applying prerequisite, HACCP, and moving now to the era of traceability. By traceability here, we are trying to solve the problem of working with the farm. In another way, returning back to supplier 0, we put a kind of responsibility on the food business operator that he must be ensuring that the food is safe for the consumer or for the next step that he is dealing in during that chain of the food. In the establishment law, it was mentioned that the authority responsibility is to establish a system for traceability along from production
up to the consumer. With traceability, another two connected words, which is food withdrawal and food recall. It is quite now difficult to change the culture of the food establishment that instead of feeling shame that he make recall, he should be honored that he can see when he has a kind of any mistake, he can declare it and making food withdrawal or food recall. And we cannot make these two events unless we have a system for traceability. Then actually traceability is for favor of the trust of the consumer, as well as an important step for getting more market all over the world. Starting from 2011, we've seen that the United States has ensured that traceability is a basic step for importing food to the United States, followed by European, and then now in our neighbor in Saudi Arabia and Emirates and so on, we are also requiring traceability to be fulfilled for any imported food. Then traceability now is not actually a choice. It must be implemented, and starting from the establishment of the first supplier and to supplier 1 and supplier 2, all type of establishment, they must continue updating their records. They must record whatever they do. They must placing the batch identification to the product they are handling. They submit all traceability records for the batch they are working with to NIFSA within a period of time does not exceed 24 hours if it's requested, and keep track records for each imported products for a period of less than 6 months if it is fresh, and 2 years if it is not a fresh product. Also, the food establishment must ensure the effectiveness of the product traceability withdrawal recall system, performing FIG withdrawal at least once a year. We developed a strategy for traceability for different food establishment, starting from packaging house or processing, storage house, even transportation, retail, supermarket. In each of different food establishment, we have different requirements. All of them require recording and tracing the product from step to step. At least one forward, backward, and one forward, and one step forward. For example, for the fresh food, which is the one which is causing the main problems, we are requiring the supplier 0 to ensure that he has complete information on the farmer, on the location of the farm, the owner of the farm, the area that is the crop is planted, the information about what he has done through planting the crop, the type of water, the time of irrigation, the type of pesticide, the PHI, the fertilizers is used. All this information must be recorded. Even for transporting from the crop from the farm to the next step, the tractor, the driver, the type of the automobile, if it is for cold, the temperature, and if for a specific commodity that needs temperature, then the commodity must also be recorded, the temperature of the commodity. If it is a dry product, then extra information must be added, like how he made the drying, if it's in ground, is it on table, it is in greenhouse, it is in outside the farm, also extra information is requested. Once the food is coming from supplier 0, it goes to supplier 1, which is mainly processor or maybe packaging house. There is difference between working directly with the farm or with supplier 0. If it directly works with farm, then extra information is requested. The main thing, as you can see, we can summarize the requested in writing and recording all the activity that has been taken on the premises. Most of the farmers did not get used to writing, and that is why we need to have more technology to help in recording and to help in exchanging the information. All the farmers right now, they have telephones and they have mobiles and they have using the internet and they are using the communication in very efficient way. If there is some type of mobile application, it can make it much easier for the farmer in order to get use and to use the system. And definitely, the use of technology is not as much as we expect in our system of food control in general. Also for storing, and this is storage house, is another big area of controlling food. There is different type of storage, from dry storage to cold to frozen, and another type of storage which is released for temporary release after releasing from the ports. In this particular case, the food must be monitored in technological way, using cameras, using sensors to control that the goods are not changing during the temporary release in the storage house. We already started. The way is long for using more food safety systems, especially for traceability, to ensure that what we produce satisfy our consumer, whether our consumer is in Egypt or outside Egypt. Thank you. Any questions?
My microphone is off, so hold on. We'll turn it on so you can hear me. Thank you very much for that, Professor. Very insightful presentation.
Thank you.
Did you have, does anyone have any quick questions? We're running really short on time, so I think they have spared you their inquisitive questions maybe until lunchtime. We have a couple of presentations before lunch, but since we're running over, we're going to chop down a little bit of time. So please, for the next 2 presentations, if you can cut it down from 15 to 10 minutes, we have the time here to help you keep track so we can get you to lunch on time. Please welcome our next presenter, our next speaker, who will present a very insightful case study. Jaheena Al-Ali is the Food Permit and Applied Nutrition Section Manager at the Food Safety Department in Dubai Municipality. She brings years of experience in this industry. She's also a member of several committees involved in nutrition and food safety. She will present her insightful case study. Thank you so much. Here you go. Here's your timer down here.
Thank you very much. I hope the voice is okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank the organizer for inviting me today to talk about programs about of food safety from the Dubai Municipality and specifically from the Food Safety Department. I'll try to go as fast as possible so I wouldn't hold you back from your lunchtime. My talk will be focused on current as well as the future programs on food safety and applied nutrition. What do we do at the Food Safety Department? We oversee all aspects of the food safety in Emirates of Dubai, and we have 4 sections in the department, which of the food trade section that look after compliance of food import and re-export processes, including consignments inspections at the port. The other section is the food inspection section. It carries out inspections in different food business and outlets in Dubai, manages customers' complaints, and also manages foodborne disease surveillance programs. The third section is the permit and applied nutrition section that provide plan approvals for establishment and manages issuing permits. The section is also responsible for food safety trainings and certifications, school food approvals, and nutrition-linked programs. The food studies and systems section manage food product registration, food labeling assessments, and food testing and surveys. To manage our programs, we use electronic systems like the ZAD system for food imports, and we use the smart food inspection system for reporting inspection, Dubai Municipality Portal for permits and approvals, and also we use the FoodWatch platform for food safety management in the food businesses. I would like to elaborate a bit on the FoodWatch platform that is used by the person in charge of food safety in a food establishment. FoodWatch helps food businesses to digitalize all records and documents that are essential to manage food safety. In this restaurant in the Palm, hundreds of records are maintained to show that they follow food safety rules. There are digital records for temperature of equipment and ways to report issues to other team members. Equipment's cleaning can be verified and reported easily. The PIC can check for pests and report incidents to the contractors in a matter of seconds. And even services like grease trap cleaning can be managed through the app. We also have initiative coming for consumers for whether they can verify the food safety information of every food business by scanning a special QR code for each business. They not only can find out information about the business, but they can find information about the food also. Nutrient content of the food, calories information, and any claims and certifications such as healthy or organic can be verified through the QR. A fully digital and data-driven food safety is what we envision for Dubai and for the world. This is it for me for today, and I would be welcoming any questions after the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I know it was, it's a challenge to have to summarize your presentation in less amount of minutes or less number of minutes. Please welcome our next speaker. You have the tough challenge of keeping them because you're the last speaker before lunchtime. Miguel Machado Cruz, I hope I pronounced it right, is the sales manager of Neotron SPA, part of, I don't want to butcher it. Where is Miguel? Here you go. Miguel, help me pronounce this. Cotecna Group. Okay, nice to meet you. Miguel Machado Cruz, you have 10 minutes as well before lunch break. Thank you, Miguel.
Good morning. I have a small film to be presented first, if possible.
Our world is more connected than ever. Ensuring the quality of our products has never been more important to preserve reputation and trust. Cotecna is a world-leading testing, inspection, and certification company. Since 1974, we have been helping businesses and governments make their supply chains more efficient, sustainable, and secure. Our network of experts provides a range of supply chain services across 5 key industries. In agriculture, we create trust and mitigate risks for our clients at every stage of production, from field to market. In food, we ensure the safety and quality of the goods we consume every day through our state-of-the-art laboratories and certification programs. In metals and minerals, we enable better efficiencies in the mining, storage, and trade of commodities, from producer to end user. In consumer goods and retail, we enhance people's everyday lives by ensuring safer products and more transparent supply chains. In government and trade solutions, we support governments to secure and facilitate trade in an innovative and sustainable manner. At Cotecna, we are committed to helping all our clients thrive in a continuously changing market environment. We act with passion. We care about people. We are accountable. We communicate openly. We make it happen. Cotecna, trust for a moving world.
Very well, thank you. So why did the big players from the food and beverage sectors deliver their products to the consumers along the process? They have been, for sure, in contact with at least one of Cotecna activities or companies in one of the 140 offices across 50 countries with more than 5,000 employees. Since the inspection and assurance of supply chain of the raw materials, ingredient, or processed goods, passing through certification of quality system, training, and technical assistance, and testing of goods around the globe, the contact experience will happen. Taking into consideration the strong focus of the group Cotecna on quality and food safety as a key element to better serve the clients, laboratories and certification companies around the globe and been acquired and are still to be in the next months in markets like Europe, China, and UAE, which we are present for almost 20 years. Concerning the present analytical and technical services provided by the group, Neutron is the biggest laboratory under a single roof with more than 550 employees, receiving more than 100 samples each day, 1,000 samples each day to be tested with at least one of the more than 4,000 available methods. Neutron offers, among other certifications and recognitions, an accredited ISO 17025 system based on a solid quality program and a high analytical sensibility to comply with the most demanding European and international legal requirements on all steps of the food chain from the farm to fork, including the chemical, microbiological, packaging control, sensory, and consumers analysis. With an experience of more than 40 years, our technical team, profound knowledge of a large spectrum of metrics, related legislation, and contact with the most demanding food companies all over the globe, gave us the tools that allow us to have been growing in the global market with deep penetration and recognition in several sectors like the baby food and organics. A recent European inquiry, Project Eat for Change, revealed that more than 85% of consumers believe that they should consume food products friendly to the environment, but also 80% of them considered the available sustainability option as too expensive and much of the time difficult to identify. On retail, and so only 60% think to know how to buy sustainable. This study also showed that 50% of the consumers consider the food produced and that they consume have a negative impact on the environment. The increased consumers' demands for safer food and beverage products with absence of very low amounts of contaminants and the perception of the categories like organic, vegan, gluten, lactose-free have led to much more complex analytical solutions requiring specialists from the side of the laboratories and of the food players to allow the communication flow, evaluation of data, and market position. So nowadays, a laboratory is not just the analytical site for quality control of the food and beverage and their ingredients, but also where you can find teams of people working in regulatory affairs to support the clients and interpretation of results according to specific standards, anticipating emerging contaminants by constant communication with the big players and international and governmental associations, research to improve and lower the method's sensibility with new complex equipments, implementing and developing new analysis driven by the client need, as for example, to enter new markets like the GB methods for China. So we hope we all can share our view to be recognized as the most reliable and customer-focused provider of testing, inspection, and certification service in the markets we operate. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much for that, Miguel. With that, who's hungry? Yeah, okay, I know you're hungry. We'll let you go for our lunch break. Let's make it around 30 minutes, and we come back to hear from Kate Goodman. I see you, Kate. I'm hungry too. We'll see you in a little bit. And don't forget to join us for the